What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode on EI Entertainment Studios, back at it with another debate episode. Today's debate episode, we're going to be talking about Shin Biollante versus the Cyclops. So here's the plan, folks. We're going to go over the backstory of these two giant kaijus, characteristics, analytics, everything. We're going to go over their stats, basically. And once we're done going over them, we're going to put them up against each other in a death battle. And obviously, when we get there, I'll go way more into detail. So without further ado, let's begin with the Cyclops. So, the Cyclops is obviously from Greek mythology, and it's a giant humanoid with one eye, in basic terms. Specifically, the Cyclopses featured in the Odyssey are the sons of Poseidon. However, this is where something more interesting comes in. This is where my altercation of Shin Biollante and the Cyclops happens, when they obviously have an altercation, and when they meet, something's going to happen to the Cyclops and it's going to change the backstory. It's called radiation that the creature of Shin Biollante actually gives out a lot. And when it was exposed to Shin Biollante's radiation, a new size and new abilities have formed in the creature, which is known as the Cyclops. So this radiation basically has completely changed the creature, made it stronger, made it bigger, and has gave it some new abilities as well, which a normal Cyclops would never have. And I think that's quite interesting. So, first, what happened to the size of the Cyclops? The new Cyclops from the radiation exposure is approximately 186 meters tall, which is incredibly big, specifically comparing it to a actual Cyclops from Greek mythology that's not exposed to this amount of radiation, right? So 186 meters tall. Abilities, I'm going to quickly skim over them, would be Eye Zap, Blinding Saliva, Flesh Ripper Hammer, Radiation Explosion. Now, for the territorial level, it's going to be high, aggression is going to be high, and the biome is actually going to be Earth, specifically on land. It could swim, but it prefers more to be on land, so land of Earth. Biome is Earth. So let's go back to the abilities, and let's see what these even are. So the first one we have is the Eye Zap, and it's similar to one of the Cyclopses from an original Godzilla series, where it has an ability to an Eye Zap, but it's not exactly the same thing. This is a brand new ability that's formed in the Cyclops. It's an abnormality now because of the radiation. And basically, this one eye that it possesses, it could zap radiation heat waves to its opponent. And what's so significant is this zap actually is like a sword. It's very sharp, so it's not meant for the radiation to hurt the opponents, because most of the opponents that this Cyclops is going to fight at this size are all like this because of radiation. Radiation actually feeds them and gives them power. So radiation itself isn't the cause of the damage that this ability does, but it's the sharpness of the laser the radiation possesses inside of it. So it's so sharp that the laser actually rips through flesh and possibly through organs if it's that strong in that specific moment. That is what causes the damage from the Eye Zap. Now the next one we have is the Blinding Saliva. This is another new ability that the radiation has caused in this Cyclops, is that its saliva has been able to evolve and has changed and become a defensive and offensive ability. And if this Cyclops spits in the eyes of its opponent, then the opponent does not get blinded forever or permanently, but it gets blinded just for a little bit. And it depends on the size of the eye, the strength of the eye, and obviously the opponent, but on a basic level, on an average, it temporarily blinds its opponents for about a minute and a half. And that's way more than enough to destroy any opponent. A minute and a half and you not seeing is enough time for someone to do a finisher. And that's enough time to kill an opponent, right? From that, we have the Flesh Ripper Hammer. Now, very interesting, specifically the name, it's called the Flesh Ripper Hammer. Not only does it rip flesh, it's actually made of flesh. So one of its hands are actually able to change its form, and the hand will be able to actually form into a hammer, and it's very sharp and has sharp edges, and basically this Cyclops swings at its opponents and it just rips their flesh with that Flesh Ripper Hammer. Interesting ability. And finally we have the Radiation Explosion. Kind of like a Super Saiyan mode, I would say, but this basically a Cyclops can go down on its knees and kind of roll up into a ball, and then when it's super angry, it just yells and opens itself up. And once it does that, it has a huge radiation explosion, and this radiation explosion causes its opponents to just fly because of so much strength that explosion has, and could fly into a building, fly into a sharp thing around them and kill them, right? With this explosion. Well, that's it for the Cyclops, and I think this is a very interesting Cyclops because I tried to make it very interesting by combining this radiation explosion to basically create a new kaiju in a sense. This is a new monster in a sense, and I think this could really fit in the Monsterverse if this were ever to be. Imagine a Cyclops having Godzilla-like abilities, similar radiation abilities, muto-like abilities, whatever you want to call it, and being able to compete with Godzilla. Although I am very highly sure that any Cyclops would still not stand a chance against the King of the Monsters, but it would be a pretty cool moneymaker for the big screen. I 100% don't doubt that. But anyways, without further ado, let's move on to Shin Biollante, the cause of the Cyclops being so grotesque and weird and so strong as well. So, Shin Biollante came into existence when the coagulant that was sprayed into Shin Godzilla's mouth right before he froze, one of the small humanoids was able to fall off the tail before all of them were actually able to freeze. From a long fall, the humanoid was bleeding and looked for a place to rest, and happened to come across a field of roses and thought that they could be food. The humanoid started eating all the roses, and his DNA mixed with all the roses that he devoured, including the blood he spilled on the ones he didn't eat. The roses came alive and decapitated the humanoid and formed Shin Biollante. Very specific. It would be really cool if a film was ever made about this. You know, I could actually make a short film. I'm thinking about doing something like this. A short film just dedicated to Shin Biollante. Interesting, right? Now, the height of Shin Biollante is approximately 252 meters tall. Abilities: Quick Skim, Spiked Atomic Laser, 10,000 Tentacles, Tentacle Poison Laser, Regeneration, Instant Adaptation, False Heart Trap. Territorial level is indeed high, aggression level is low, and Biome is unlimited, and I'll explain that why in the abilities. So, starting off, let's go back to the abilities now. Spiked Atomic Laser. It comes from Shin DNA. Remember, this Biollante creature still has its own Biollante DNA, the Rose DNA, but it's mixed with Shin Godzilla DNA, so it's obviously way more adaptive, way more evolved, and way more stronger and a better fighter than the original Biollante. Way more stronger and bigger. Anyways, the Spiked Atomic Laser. It's basically like the same laser where Shin Godzilla himself possesses, but the difference is that this obviously has a DNA of a rose, so when you look at a rose, it has thorns, and in this case, the size of this creature, it's going to be giant thorns. And this laser is basically a regular laser, but instead of a regular laser, it has giant thorns inside of the laser getting shot at the same time. So when it's hitting an opponent, not only is it a laser, but it's also thorns as well, ripping into the flesh of the opponent. Very powerful ability, because the offensive and defensive use is able to be done with this, right? Next we have 10,000 tentacles. This is interesting. A regular Biollante only has 4 tentacles. This one has 10,000 tentacles, and they can defend her, they can attack opponents because they themselves have their own mouth and teeth, right? Now, with that being said, these every single 10,000 of these tentacles have something called a tentacle poison laser, where they actually numb the opponent with their tentacle poison laser, and it's very powerful because the numbness, what it does is it doesn't let the opponent understand when to go to defensive mode, and defense is the most powerful thing. It's actually more important than offense because you should know when to defend your body, and these opponents, when they're numb, they don't feel pain, they don't know when to stop, and Shin Biollante could be just doing non-stop damage, just kill them on the spot because they don't know when to pull back, right? And then after that we have the regeneration. Coming from Shin DNA, she can regenerate health non-stop. And this next one is going to explain why the biome is unlimited. It's called instant adaptation. Let me for a second stop. Let's go back to Shin Godzilla for this to make sense. If you've ever seen the film of Shin Godzilla, he has many forms. Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, and Form 4. The reason why he has so many forms is because he evolves to fit the environment. For example, from Form 1 to Form 2, he changed to come on land. When he came on land, he needed to walk, so he changed from Form 2 to Form 3 to be able to walk, and then Form 3 to Form 4 to be able to walk even faster and to defend himself better and to cover more ground in a sense. And there's so much going on, and to actually have a heat reduction in his plates. So much is going on, but he can evolve and adapt within seconds. That would take millions of years. So same thing with Shin Biollante. She can evolve and adapt seconds to her opponents' abilities, to her environment, and she can adapt to fit any biome. She can adapt her body to basically survive in space, to survive on Earth, to survive in lava, in ocean, whatever you want to name it, right? Whatever you want to name it. And that's why we have the biome set as unlimited. And finally, we have the false heart trap, the most powerful ability that Shin Biollante possesses. So we all know where Biollante's heart is in the original Biollante, the middle of her stomach, the red part, right? That's how Godzilla actually destroys Biollante in the film. This one has that again, but that's actually not the heart anymore. The actual heart is in the head next to the brain. That's a false heart trap. It's a fake heart trying to lure opponents to attack that, and it's actually a mirror. What it does is literally it mirrors the ability back to the opponent. So if an opponent punches, it's going to switch the arm back and punch themselves. Tail whip back. Atomic breath, it's going to mirror back to that Godzilla that uses it. So that's what it is. So we just finished both of these kaijus. Now we've gone to the final phase. Let's put these two monsters against each other in a death battle. So what are we going to do? How it's going to happen? We're going to go close range and far range. Now let me explain why I do it like this. When I say specifically far range, it's very important to rate these opponents at a limited capacity. So we limit their abilities at far range because they obviously can't use every single ability, and I'm trying to see what opponent can basically win the battle with limited abilities, who can prevail with limited abilities. Very powerful thing to do. If one can do it, then they are truly a king in this battle, or a queen in this case, if Shin Biollante wins. So that's one way. The other way is just close range, all-out war, and they just attack each other with no limits, right? So we're going to do far range first, and here's the one basic rule. These opponents cannot come closer than 700 meters apart. So that means they have to be 700 meters apart. They cannot come closer than that. Alright? That's the only rule they have. And obviously that's going to cause to some abilities actually not being able to be used. So let's see what abilities our good old Cyclops can or cannot use. So, the first one we have is the Eye Zap. The Eye Zap is meant to go far distances, so it will be able to be used. It's sufficient for 700 meters. So yes, the answer is it can be used. The Blinding Saliva, obviously, to be realistic, it cannot be used. It's not gonna, Saliva's not going to travel 700 meters. So the answer is no. He can't use the Eye Zap. Or excuse me, he can't use the Blinding Saliva. excuse me there, I meant to say the blinding saliva. So yes, to clarify myself, he can use the eye zap, but cannot use the blinding saliva. Now, the Flesh Ripper Hammer, obviously, he can't touch the opponent. Remember, they have to be 700 meters apart. So he can't physically hit Shin Biollante, so he can't use the Flesh Ripper Hammer. But the Radiation Explosion can be used. It can travel more than 700 meters. The only two things that you can actually use is the Eye Zap and the Radiation Explosion. Now, let's see what ability Shin Biollante can or cannot use. So Spiked Atomic Laser, obviously, she can use that. It's meant to go far distances, perfectly fine, it can be used, right? After that, we have the 10,000 Tentacles. Now the 10,000 Tentacles, actually, they are abilities that are connected to the body. So remember, she can't physically touch the opponent, so they're actually useless in this case. You know, if we're talking about anything in the mode of defensive, yes, she can defend her body, but offensive-wise, the answer is no. It can't be used, right? Tentacle Poison Laser also cannot be used because that specific ability cannot travel as far. It's just not sufficient, right? Now, Regeneration, sure. It has nothing to do with how far she's from her opponent. Instant Adaptation, yes. False Heart Trap, unfortunately, it cannot be used. Will not mirror as far as 700 meters in this case. Okay, we have finally done that. Let's see what's gonna happen in this battle. So in far range, I personally see Shin Biollante being the first one to strike, being a fairly aggressive creature. Even though her aggression is low, I still believe she is gonna be the one to attack first with the Spiked Atomic Laser. Now the Spiked Atomic Laser is going to absolutely destroy the Cyclops, both the body as in the skin and the flesh, because it's going to be a laser. And remember, the Cyclops' body is not like Godzilla, where he's very scaly and strong, or we could even say Shin Biollante, because Shin Biollante is very scaly and very strong because it has Shin DNA, meaning it has Shin skin, and it also, besides the Shin skin, it has the thorns of the rose all over her body, right? So with this ability, the Spiked Atomic Laser, it's a laser first of all, and it's going to cut through the skin and cut through the flesh, because the Cyclops is still like a human-like body. Just imagine enlarging a human body, but it's not. The skin is still very, basically, not as thick as it should be for an opponent like this, and that's just the harsh reality. With the not only the laser, but also the thorns. So the lasers are gonna do their job. The thorns is what's gonna really rip the flesh up, and it could possibly even reach the organ, right? And completely just destroy the inner organ. So the Cyclops is gonna take a lot of battle damage from this Spiked Atomic Laser, and the Cyclops, as a compensation, of course, can use the Eye Zap, and the Eye Zap is very powerful, right? The Eye Zap is very powerful. We talked about this. It's super sharp, and it can basically completely destroy most opponents because of how sharp it is and the force of the radiation. But here's where Shin Biollante's defensive form comes in. Remember, she can adapt and evolve, and this is the power of the Shin DNA. She can adapt and evolve. So one time, just one time, that this Cyclops uses this Eye Zap, her body is automatically going to go to adaptive mode, or you can call it evolution mode, right? And it's going to learn this ability, and it's going to evolve and adapt their body to not take any damage, but instead to actually get more energy from the Eye Zap, from the Cyclops. So making that ability no longer useful, and when that's done, the only thing he has left is the Radiation Explosion. But Shin Biollante in this case can keep on using the Spiked Atomic Laser, and it's just going to completely destroy. And who is to say that Shin Biollante can't actually adapt and evolve with the radiation explosion as well? So therefore I believe because of the spiked atomic laser and the adaptation ability, Shin Biollante is going to prevail and win 1-0, actually kill the Cyclops 1-0 in terms of far range. Now let's go to close range, where it's more interesting. Every ability can be used. It could be a different game. So let's see what happens here. So before we begin, Cyclops is 186 meters tall. Shin Biollante is 252 meters tall. So, not a huge difference, but there certainly is a good amount of difference here, right? So Shin Biollante herself already has the bigger height advantage, more stronger, and just generally just has more girth to the body. When this Cyclops is going to fight Shin Biollante, I think it's very not a smart idea to come close to this creature, because this creature has 10,000 tentacles, and these tentacles also have their own teeth. So basically she's guarded by 10,000 tentacles. So the only thing he can do is try to stay far and use the eye zap. But we are doing close range, so he has no choice and has to come and just ram. They have to ram each other. And if they ram into each other, Shin Biollante is obviously going to take the win, and the ramming portion is going to completely knock down the Cyclops, whether you like it or not. And those 10,000 tentacles are going to wrap around the Cyclops. And the Cyclops, only thing he can do right now is form his hand into the flesh ripper hammer and start just cutting off and destroying these tentacles. But it's 10,000 tentacles, so even if he gets a few hundred, there's 10,000 tentacles. They're all gonna come and wrap around his body, start squeezing him, and they're gonna hold him down. And after that one point, they're gonna put him right next to the false heart trap, and everything he does is gonna come right back to him. And honestly, in my opinion, I think the spiked atomic laser it's gonna be even more deadly from a close range. And I still believe Shin Biollante, because of this, is going to win 2-0. Obviously, this is just my opinion. You can debate me in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. And just to make sure all of you guys are on the same page, the winner is Shin Biollante. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day.